Michael DiRocco, great job covering the Jags. He joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline to give us a little insight. You know, Michael, the Eagles have had all sorts of issues, injuries. They just seem to happen each week with this team to get them to 3-4. What is the path that has taken the Jags to this same record?
Well, it sounds pretty much like a carbon copy of what's going on in Jacksonville. You know, they've had a rash of injuries on offense. They're down to their third-string left tackle. The other four starters in the offensive line are playing with chronic injuries. They're down to their fifth tight end because of injuries. Haven't had Fournette since week 4, and lost one of their other running backs to a Lisfranc injury. Ended up having to go try and sign Jamal Charles. That didn't work out. They traded for Carlos Hyde, and then Blake Bortles hasn't played very well at all since week 4. And you mash all that together, and you get an offense that's been outscored 57-0 in the first half of the last 3 games, and has only scored 28 points. So that is really the main reason why they're here. The defense hasn't made a bunch of big plays like it did last year, but it's still playing well. The numbers are great, top 10 in all but one category there. But the offense just hasn't given them a chance.
Yeah, that's very similar. You know, the Eagles' defense has been pretty good. I mean, they're top 5 in the league in points against, but when the offense doesn't score and then you ask them to make a play every single week. Last week, they blew a 17-point lead in the fourth quarter. They blew a 17-3 lead in the second half against the Titans. They're putting a lot on the defense's plate here, but you just mentioned something. Last year, the Eagles got that. They took the opportunistic. They scored off of turnovers. They constantly got them. It seemed that Jacksonville had that defense that everyone's been talking or was talking about. Is the defense playing at a similar level and they just, can't help the offense out enough, or have they taken a little bit of a step back?
Well, they've taken a little bit of a step back in terms of pass rush. They're 15 sacks through 7 games, which is not great. Now, it's probably unfair to expect them to hit the 55 that they did last year because 2 of those games were 10-sack games. So they're averaging just roughly 2 a game, which isn't really getting it done. But the bigger issue is the turnovers. They've only forced 5. Last year they were second in the NFL, I think with 33. And they scored 7 defensive touchdowns last year. They've got 1 this year, and that's it. But they've dropped at least 4 interceptions. And they're just not making the big plays. Now, again, it's still a pretty darn good defense. They're just hamstrung a little bit by the offense. And here's the thing. 16 of the Jaguars' 36 offensive possessions have been 4 plays or fewer over the last 3 weeks, which, that your defense is on the field a long time, and that wears them down, and it's a problem. And fourth quarter, they're facing some situations where they need to get a key stop, and they're unable to do it. So it's still a good unit, and I expect them to eventually get a few more turnovers and start picking up the pace there. But the blame for this 3-4 start really rests squarely with the offense.
Michael DiRocco covers the Jaguars. They're taking on the Eagles in London. Carlos Hyde is in. Do you expect him to be he didn't play last week, but do you expect him to jump right in and be the guy this week?
Yeah, absolutely. They acquired him on Friday, and he didn't get to Jacksonville until Saturday, so they didn't want to stick him in the next day. They figured that would probably be asking too much, but he's going to be on the field on Sunday, and I expect him. I expect them to go back to the style of play that they built the team for, which is power run, play action pass, and they built that team around Fournette. Well, when Fournette went out, they don't have a similar kind of runner, but Carlos Hyde is. So I expect them to kind of go back to that this week. So I'm guessing anywhere in the 10 to 15 touch range for Carlos Hyde because they want to establish the run and take some pressure off Bortles. But asking him to do much more than that with only basically a week to learn the offense and especially the protections is probably asking too much. But 10 to 15 touches, I think, is realistic.
Give me your view of how this quarterback situation might look over there. I mean, they don't score in 2 drives. They pull the plug. I mean, this is something to keep an eye on, right?
Yeah, they want a fast start. They haven't had a fast start at all. In their 4 losses, they haven't scored any points on their opening drive. And the longest they've had the ball was 6 plays. And then, on their 3 wins, they scored on their first drive. So they kind of feel like a fast start's important. But if that doesn't happen, they just can't turn the ball over. That's been the biggest issue in the 3-game streak. 11 turnovers in that time. Bortles has committed 8 of them. Last week he had 2 terrible fumbles on early in the first half, early in the second half, where he was scrambling and just terrible ball security. They just can't do that. So if Bortles goes out there and maybe he's not 100% effective, but he's not turning the ball over and giving the other team short fields, and I think we'll see him in that game and as their starter going forward, because that's the number one thing that they've preached on him ever since Marrone and Coughlin got here was take care of the ball, take care of the ball, do not turn it over. You don't turn it over, they run the ball, and with the defense that they have, they feel they're in every single game. And if Bortles can get back to doing that, then he'll be the quarterback for the rest of the year.
Michael, speaking of injuries, that secondary is going to have a completely different look on Sunday, will it not?
Yeah, A.J. Boye is not going to play with a calf. DJ Hayden is questionable, but he hasn't practiced since September 21st, so I don't expect him to play. He's a nickelback, and Tyler Patman isn't going to play. He suffered a neck strain last week, so it's Jalen Ramsey, and then the other 3 corners are undrafted rookies. So the Eagles receivers could have a really big day on Sunday.
Now, let me ask you how, you're playing the defending Super Bowl champions. A lot of time that seems like, okay, this is obviously a tough battle. 3 and 4, Eagles are really struggling. Does Jacksonville feel like this is a team they can get right on, or is this a matchup down there that they think, man, we just lost a couple of games, haven't looked good, and now we face the defending Super Bowl champions?
It's been funny this week. All of the talk in the locker room and all of the things that Coach Doug Marrone have said, it's really been very little about the Eagles. It's more about them trying to figure out how to stop turning the ball over, how to, have some consistency on offense, how to make a few plays here and there, how to decrease some of the frustration in the locker room. I mean, it's really been more of an emphasis on trying to fix their terrible play over the last 3 weeks as opposed to, hey, we got a chance, to get back on track against a team that's reeling, the Super Bowl champs. This is, great chance for us to prove, hey, we could have been in that game last year against the Eagles and how we would have looked in that game. All that's moot at this point. They're just trying to figure out how to make it through a game without throwing up on their shoes.
Well, they've done this before. Is that something that you think will play to their advantage? This is the 6th time or 6th straight year they've won 3 in a row over there. Bortles, he's got to be the best quarterback in the history of these London games. He's amazing over there. So is that something that they think they might have a little bit of an advantage? Just the first time Philly's doing the London trip.
Yeah, they really do believe that, and this is their 6th trip. 39 of the 53 guys in the active roster have made the trip at least once,
wow.
And 16 have made it at least twice. So, yeah, I mean, look, they've got the system down. They experimented their first 2 years, and then they've settled on the travel schedule and where they're staying and their practice schedule and all that stuff. They're familiar with Wembley. They're familiar with the field conditions. They're familiar with what's around the hotel. These guys are all creatures of habit. They like a routine, and when you get out of your routine, it does kind of create a little anxiety for them. John Harbaugh said it last year after the Ravens lost to the Jags. He was like, look, we thought we had a pretty good plan, and we planned everything out, and we had the logistics, but until you get here, you don't really know how it's going to be, and there's always something that kind of crops up a little bit. So, I think the Jags understand that does give them a little bit of an advantage. And, I can't deny that in the last 2 years, especially, they played the Ravens and they played the Colts. Both of those teams were ridiculously sluggish and looked terrible early. The Colts were able to kind of come back and get back in that game, but the Ravens weren't. So I'd honestly be interested. I'm interested to see how the Eagles are going to look in that first quarter and a half, because that'll tell me if there really is something to that.
Michael DiRocco covers the Jacksonville Jaguars. I want to get your take. This week, I don't know, did Blake Bortles and the Jaguars take Malcolm Jenkins' comments as a shot at Bortles? Was that some bulletin board material unnecessary for a game of this magnitude? Both teams need this game. Did they look at that as a little bit of a slight?
Just a little bit. I mean, from the standpoint of, hey, we can criticize our guy, you can't, type of thing. Mm-hmm. But honestly, again, that was pretty much kind of brushed aside because they're searching for the answers, any answer they can find on this offense. And Bortles has been hammered by player after player after player: Jadeveon Clowney, Vontaze Burfict, Richard Sherman, Jarrell Casey. I mean, they've all taken shots at him, and it's just sort of rolled off his back. So I don't anticipate this being any different. I don't think the team's going to rally around him for that reason, or he's going to, rally, try and rally the team to support him for that. I just think that this was a week that's so focused on them trying to find out why they stink that anything else really has been secondary.
I'll tell you, we're trying to search for the same answers here. Why the Eagles have stunk so far this year. They got Carson Wentz back. He's been very good. But you would be surprised, Michael, that there are a portion of people that say they should have never gone to him. They should have stuck with Foles. And, the guy wins the Super Bowl. He's the MVP. He's going to have that kind of support. But it has been a bizarre year down here with 2 leads of 14 or more points in the second half. They haven't been able to hold. And it seems like one of those years that anything that can go wrong is happening. Where last year, anything that could go right did go right. I mean, everything went their way. It seems very similar down in Jacksonville.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at the defense last year, they had 2 starters miss a total of 3 starts. And that was
wow.
It. It was ridiculous how healthy that unit was. And now you look at this year, and now they're down to 3 undrafted rookies in the secondary, and the injuries have ravaged the offense. And, the expectations were high on this team, obviously,
sure.
And the defense, placed even higher expectations on itself. And, sometimes when you do that, and things go wrong like it has, that leads to some frustration, that leads to some locker room issues, that leads to finger pointing, and I think we're starting to see some of that happen with the Jaguars. If they don't play well in this game on Sunday, and certainly if that offense looks bad again, I expect it to just become a massive mess inside that locker room after this game.
It's a big one for both. 3-4, both teams playing for a lot. Eagles and Jags. You can hear the game right here. Countdown to Kickoff show starts at 6:30. Michael DiRocco covers Jacksonville, ESPN.com, NFL Nation here on the Sports Bash. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it, pal.
Thanks for having me.